Okay, so now let's talk about cost savings in S3. And for this, we'll get started with S3 storage classes. So now in this lecture, now in the next lecture, I have included in the full lecture detailing exactly what each storage class does in case you don't know. But in case you know, I wanna make this lecture very short, but for you in order to not to bore you. So the first class is S3 standard, general purpose, and then we have S3 standard infrequent access. This is when our objects are going to be infrequently accessed, and so we want to have some cost savings by having them being cheaper. But we are going to pay a little bit more every time we are trying to access these objects. Then we are getting S3 one zone infrequent access. This is for objects are going to be cheaper as well to store in S3. But this time, if you lose a full AZ, full availability zone, then you will lose access to your objects. So it needs to make sure that these objects are recoverable or can be recreated. For example, thumbnails from S3 images can be very good use case for one zone IA. Intelligent tiering, which is going to be smart enough to move objects in between the tiers in order to give you the maximum amount of cost saving, and you have to pay for that monitoring. So you have to pay for each object that is being monitored, but all in all together you have less management on your part, and you should have some money. Like then we have Amazon S3 Glacier instant retrieval, which is Glacier tier, which allow you to retrieve your files very quickly. And we have flexible retrieval, where you have more flexibility into how you want to retrieve your file. Then deep archive for files are going to be giving you the most cost savings, but that will take a long time to be retrieved. And and to move between all these storage classes, you can use either a manual actions, or you can define a S3 lifecycle configuration. That will be automatically transition your objects to different tier after a certain amount of time. So the first cost savings is going to be using S3 select and Glacier select. So the idea is that if we know we are retrieving only a subset of our data in terms of column or in terms of rows from S3 or Glacier, we can save in network and the CPU cost by using S3 select and Glacier select. The second thing is, if we use S3 lifecycle rules, then we can automatically transition objects between tiers or even delete objects, and that will obviously save us some money in terms of object storage. If we are able to compress our objects before sending it into S3, then we are obviously going to save in storage space, and therefore we will pay less money. Finally, there's a feature I haven't mentioned yet, but like it's good to mention right now, which is S3 requester page. So with requester page, you are making sure that the person requesting for the object is going to have to pay and not you. So in general, bucket owners pay for all Amazon S3 storage, their storage and the data transfer cost associated with our buckets. But when you enable requester pays, only the requester will pay for the cost of the request and the data download from the bucket. So you still have the cost of storing the data in your bucket, but all the transfer cost to download the data from the bucket is going to be at the charge of the requester. So if you have an object that's for example a large data set, and you want to share it with like thousands of accounts, and obviously you don't want to clear all the network cost for this, bear all the network cost for this, so you can enable S3 requester pays, and then each account that will request data from your bucket will have to pay the data transfer cost, and not you in such case. And for this feature to work, you need to make sure you set up an S3 bucket policy that obligates S3 requester pays to work. And so the users have to be authenticated with IAM before they are able to request a data from your bucket. But now there's a trick here, right? Because if you allow your users to access your S3 bucket by using assume role, cross account IAM role, then the owner of the account of that role is going to be the one paying for the request. So if you create a role in your account and you give other account access to that role, and then that role queries your S3 buckets, then you are going to pay for the request, because the request comes from within your accounts. So if you want to make sure that other accounts are paying for the request, you do not need to use IAM role. You need to create an S3 bucket policy and make sure other users are authenticated using an IAM role or IAM user that correspond to their accounts. And that's it. That's all you need to know about the S3 cost savings. Okay, now let's discuss different storage classes we have in S3. Again, just as a little more introduction for the S3 storage classes, the first one is Amazon S3 standard, general purpose. Then we have Amazon S3 infrequent access. Then we have Amazon S3 one zone infrequent access. Then we have Glacier instant retrieval, Glacier flexible retrieval. Then we have Glacier deep archive. And then finally the Amazon S3 intelligent tiering. So we'll learn about all these classes in depth in this lecture, but you have to know them for the exam. Okay, then when you you create an object in Amazon S3, you can choose its class. You can also modify its class, a storage class manually, or we'll see as well how we can modify it. Or you can use Amazon S3 lifecycle configuration to move objects automatically between all these storage classes. So first, before we go into the classes, let's define the concept of durability and availability. So durability represents how many times an object is going to be lost by Amazon S3. So Amazon S3 has a very high durability. It's called 11 nines. So 9 points and then 9 times. Then 9%. Like that means that that on an average, if you store 10 million objects on Amazon S3, you can expect to lose a single object once every 10,000 years. So it's quite durable. Over 10,000 years, you can expect to lose one object from the 10 million objects with the 11 nines of the durability. And the durability is the same for all storage classes in Amazon S3. Availability represents how readily available a service is. So this depends on the storage class. For example, S3 standard has 99.99% availability. That means that about 53 minutes a year, the service is not going to be available. That means that you will get some errors when you deal with the service. So you need to take that into account and when you develop your applications. Okay. So now S3 standard has 99.99% availability. So it's going to be used for frequently accessed data, and this is the kind of storage you use by default, and it has low latency and high throughputs. It can sustain 2 concurrent facility failures on the side of the AWS, and use cases for it is going to be big data, analytics, mobile and gaming applications, so as well as the content distribution. So next we have S3 infrequent access. So this is data that is going to be, as the name indicates, less frequently accessed, but requires rapid access when needed. So it's going to be lower cost than S3 standard, but you will have a cost on retrieval. So the S3 standard IA is 99.9% availability, so it's a bit less available. And the use cases for it is going to be disaster recovery and backups, and Amazon S3 one zone infrequent access and one zone IA. ESC has like high availability, okay, within a single AZ only. I'm sorry, the camera view was not working. So let's get started where we were. Okay. So one zone IA, it's going to be have the high durability, okay, and within single availability zone only, and the data is going to be lost if the availability zone is somewhat destroyed, as well as durability it's even lower, so it's like 99.5%. So the use cases of S3 one zone IA is to store secondary copy of backups of maybe on-premises data or data that you can recreate. So next we have the Glacier storage classes. So the Glacier is, as the name, it gets very cold. So it's a low cost storage. A storage meant for archiving and backup, and the pricings that you are going to pay for the storage plus pay for the retrieval cost. In your 3 classes of storage within Glacier, you have Amazon S3 Glacier instant retrieval, then and this gives you millisecond retrieval, which is great. For example, like for data that's accessed once a quarter, and the minimum store duration is 90 days. So this is backup, but you need to access it within milliseconds. Then we have the Glacier flexible retrieval. It's used to be called Amazon S3 Glacier, but then they renamed this thing like they added more here. So the Amazon Glacier flexible retrieval has 3 flexibility. So you have expedited, where you get the data back 1 and 5 minutes. You have then a standard to get the data back like 3 to 5 hours, or bulk, which is free, and where you get data back in like between 5 to 12 hours. So and the minimum storage duration as well is 90 days. So here instance means you retrieve data instantly, and flexible means that you are willing to wait up to, for example, 12 hours to retrieve your data. And then we have Glacier Deep Archive, which is made for long-term storage. So we have 2 tiers of retrieval as well. We have a standard of 12 hours of bulk, 12 hours, and bulk of 48 hours. So you may be ready to wait a lot of time to retrieve data, but it's going to give you the lowest cost. And as well, the minimum storage duration is 180 days in case of the Deep Archive, S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So as you know, that's a lot of storage classes, and there's one last called S3 Intelligent Tiering, which is going to allow you to move objects between access tiers based on usage patterns. Access tiers based on usage patterns. And for this, you are going to incur a small monthly monitoring fee and auto tiering fee, and there are no retrieval charges in S3 Intelligent Tiering. So there is the infrequent access tier for objects not accessed, for example, for 30 days. Then you have the archive instant access tier automatically as well for objects not accessed over 90 days. And then the archive access tier, that's optional, and you can configure it for from 90 days to 700 plus days. And then you have the deep archive access tier, also optional, that you can configure for objects that haven't been accessed between 180 days to like the 700 plus days. So okay, so S3 Intelligent Tiering is really to allow you to just sit back and relax, where S3 moves objects for you. So if you compare all the storage classes, you don't need to remember these numbers, but it's just for you to make sense of what they are. So you get the durability of 11 nines everywhere. Then as availability goes down, the less zones you have, of course, it shows you like for like example, the minimum storage duration chart and so on. So take some time to look at this diagram at your own. You should understand it. And the diagram is this, and the classes comparison is this. So 11 nines is everywhere, and it just shows you like the example of minimum storage duration and chart and so on, minimum storage duration and 30. And availability zones is going to be 1 in case of the 1 zone IA and the Glacier, and every other is the 3 availability zone. That is one thing is not been mentioned in this graph that has to be mentioned is how much time it's going to retrieve those objects at a time like we had earlier of around 12 hour or something like that. So the timing. So take some time to look at this diagram on your own, and you should understand it, but you should not remember it for sure, but you should just know the standard to intelligent tiering, to intelligent standard IA, to one zone IA, to Glacier instant retrieval, to flexible retrieval, to deep archive, and see what has changed, what is actually being more here for some of the features and availability, durability, and storage duration, billable object, and when the retrieval fee that's going to be there. So now if we look at some pricing, for example, in the US East 1, so this is the kind of pricing you would have for all the storage classes. And again, you are not supposed to remember everything, but it's good for you to have a look at it on your own time, just to make sure you understand, because if you understand what the classes name are, then you should be able to make sense of these classes. So the storage class cost per GB is going to be the highest for the standard 0.023, and it's going to be lowest for the 0.00099 for the Glacier Deep Archive as the features and available retrieval cost and retrieval time. So the retrieval time has been mentioned here. standard intelligent tiering, standard IA, and one zone IA. Glacier instant retrieval is going to be having the retrieval time of instantaneous, but Glacier flexible retrieval and Glacier deep archive, there where actually here we are having some of the latency in retrieval, which is going to be in the flexible retrieval of around 1 to 5 minutes, and in case of the standard 3 to 5 hours, and if we are retrieving in bulk 5 to 12 hours. And in case of the Glacier deep archive, that's in case of the standard 12 hours, and in case of the bulk we have the 48 hours of retrieval time. And the monitoring cost just apply case of the intelligent tiering, as it monitors the object who is like getting older, and based on that we will switch the storage classes to some of the Glacier storage classes, or like Glacier flexible retrieval as based on 30 days, 90 days, or even like the 700 days. You can see the S3 pricing model with this link that has been mentioned at the bottom of the slide. Go through the documentation if you want to know a little more in the depth about the S3 storage classes. And certainly here the questions you will be getting for the solution architect will be based on the time, retrieval time, first of all. That if certain, like the case of the medical related architecture you are building, a medical organization architecture you are building, in that case they would say that if the actually here the medical reports that coming to the for somewhat the compliance and other auditing requirements, then there they don't want those documents to be available instantaneous, those files to be available instant. They can have a latency like 1 to 5, 3 to 5 hours. So certainly more of the range goes to the 5 to 12 hours and more less than 12. So mostly you will be going into the Glacier flexible retrieval in such of the case of the solution architect. And this is it. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.